The river trembled under the bruised light of dawn, its silver skin breaking with bubbles that rose like fragile breaths. Evelyn whispered, "It feels alive," as her eyes followed the ripples winding into shadow. Marcus crouched low, his voice tight. Something stirs beneath. Something restless. A sudden crack split the silence as Jonah's hand shot to his chest, heart racing at the sharp splash upriver. A heron shrieked, wings thrashing as it lifted, scattering droplets like sparks of fire. Evelyn gasped, "It's hunting," her words a whisper tangled with fear. A shadow darted below the surface, swift as a blade. Marcus hissed, "Keep still," though his knuckles whitened as the water churned darker. The river, once playful, now pulsed with menace. Jonah muttered, "It waits for weakness." Then in a breath, the water swallowed the morning's song, leaving only silence heavy as stone. The silence pressed harder than the cry of the heron, making the air heavy. Evelyn whispered, "Did you see it?" But Marcus shook his head slowly, jaw tight. Jonah kicked at the ground nervously, muttering, "It was too fast." The river now seemed like a predator, its calm nothing more than a mask. Evelyn's breath fogged the air as her eyes darted across the shifting mist. Marcus muttered, "The river hides its teeth well." Jonah's lips curled into a nervous smile, but fear sharpened his eyes. The water gurgled faintly, then fell still, as though mocking their unease. Evelyn clutched her sleeve tighter, her gaze fixed. No birds sang. No wind moved. The river had swallowed every sound, as if warning them that dawn had teeth of its own. Evelyn crouched lower, her eyes locked on the water's shifting skin. Marcus's voice was gravel. "Predators don't hunt in silence. They wait." Jonah bent forward, voice cracking. "Then why show itself?" The river glimmered faintly as though taunting them. A faint swirl broke the surface, too delicate for comfort. Evelyn's heart pounded in her throat as she whispered, "It wants us to know." Marcus ground his teeth, his eyes narrowing into steel. Jonah kicked a pebble into the water, his hand trembling. Ripples spread outward, swallowed instantly by stillness. Marcus hissed, "You just fed it." Evelyn reached out, clutching Jonah's wrist before he could move again. Her whisper was fierce, "Don't give it reason to rise." The river suddenly belched bubbles, violent and sharp, scattering the mist. Evelyn jolted back, hand tightening on Jonah. Marcus sprang to his feet, barked, "Stay behind me." The surface writhed like an animal in pain, waves slapping at the muddy shore. Jonah stumbled backward, nearly falling, eyes wide in raw terror. Evelyn gasped, "It's coming up," her voice trembling. The water bulged, but nothing surfaced, only froth swirling like poison. The silence returned as abruptly as it had broken, heavier than before. Marcus whispered, almost to himself, "It feeds at night, but it warns at dawn." Evelyn's throat tightened as she clutched Jonah close, the air thick with dread, the river waiting like a blade hidden in velvet. The three froze, each breath shallow, listening to the silence between heartbeats. Evelyn murmured, "It warned us." Marcus's voice cracked low, "Warnings are never mercy." Jonah's gaze flicked desperately from the river to the tree line, his lips trembling with unspoken fear. The river now lay still, but its stillness was not peace. It was threat. Evelyn wiped damp hair from her cheek, whispering, "It waits until dark." Marcus answered coldly, "And when dark comes it feeds." Jonah shook his head, whispering almost to himself, "Then we must be gone before night falls." But even as he spoke, a deep gurgle stirred beneath, low and guttural, like a throat clearing for hunger. Evelyn knelt by the water's edge, brushing her fingers against the cold surface. Her voice wavered, "It feels like it carries every breath we take." Marcus stood behind her, his tone steady. "This river has fed generations." Jonah leaned close, whispering, "But what if it turns against us?" The air held the damp scent of earth and moss, rich with memory. Evelyn closed her eyes, her reflection quivering with the ripples. Marcus murmured, "It gives and takes in equal measure." Jonah shifted uneasily, muttering, "But tonight it will take more than it gives." Evelyn pressed her palm flat, her whisper soft. Then we must honor it before it decides our fate. Marcus crouched, drawing lines in the wet soil with a stick, his jaw tight. He said, "My father told me the river only respects strength." Evelyn frowned, shaking her head. "Strength is not enough, Marcus. It respects balance." Jonah's eyes darted nervously, his voice cracking. "Balance is already gone." The river shimmered, reflecting fractured light like broken glass. Evelyn whispered, "We can't leave it, not yet." Marcus exhaled sharply, tossing the stick aside. "We stay then. But every moment we linger, we risk becoming its offering." Jonah's voice trembled. "Then teach me how to stand against it, before the night steals us." Evelyn's voice softened as she turned toward Jonah, brushing dirt from his sleeve. She whispered, "You remind me of my brother, fragile, but fierce when it matters." Jonah's lips pressed thin, his eyes glistening. "I don't feel fierce." Marcus turned sharply, his tone cold. "Fear keeps you alive. Forget that and you're already gone." The river hissed softly against the bank, like breath through clenched teeth. Evelyn's hand lingered on Jonah's arm, her eyes firm. "Fierce isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to move through it." Marcus stared out at the water, silent, while Jonah's shoulders straightened slightly, courage trembling into form. The forest loomed around them, branches reaching like claws into the mist. Marcus whispered, "This land feeds us, but it remembers every drop of blood spilled here." Evelyn's eyes swept the tree line, her voice quiet. "Then we must walk gently, so it remembers kindness too." Jonah clutched a broken reed tightly, murmuring, "Kindness doesn't stop hunger." A crow's harsh caw echoed, sending shivers down their spines. Evelyn glanced upward, whispering, "Even the birds feel it." Marcus tightened his grip on the reed Jonah held, saying, "Then we must decide whether we endure as prey, or fight as those who survive." Jonah swallowed hard, caught between their words, his breath shallow. Evelyn stood tall, her voice steady though her heart pounded. "If we surrender to fear, the river will own us." Marcus stepped closer, his jaw set. "It already owns us, Evelyn. We are nothing without it." Jonah's voice cracked, "But what if it chooses to drown us instead?" The water shimmered with an oily sheen, faint and unsettling. Evelyn whispered, "Then we fight for every breath it cannot take." Marcus's eyes darkened, muttering, "Survival is not honor. It is survival, nothing more." Jonah looked between them, torn, whispering, "Then tonight decides who we truly are." The river burbled faintly, like laughter, mocking their resolve. The sky dimmed as clouds smothered the pale light, casting the river in shadows. Evelyn whispered, "It feels like the day is dying early." Marcus's jaw tightened, his words hard. "The river calls the storm when it hungers." Jonah shivered, wrapping his arms around himself, muttering, "I hear it breathing." The water rippled violently, though no wind stirred, as if something below exhaled with menace. Evelyn pressed her lips together, steadying her breath. "It waits for weakness." Marcus's eyes narrowed. Then it seized Jonah first. Jonah's face twisted, whispering, "Don't say that." A branch snapped in the forest, echoing like a warning. The silence that followed was thicker than fog, and all three froze as though the earth itself held its breath. Jonah stumbled forward, his boots splashing into the shallow edge. He gasped. "It grabbed me, though nothing touched him but water." Evelyn pulled him back, her grip fierce. "Stay out of it." Marcus snarled, "The river wants you afraid." The surface convulsed with bubbles, then stilled, mocking them with silence. Jonah's chest heaved as he muttered, "I felt it pull." Evelyn pressed her hand to his arm, her eyes fierce. "You're still here. Don't let it own your fear." Marcus crouched low, peering at the ripples, his voice low. "Fear is the bait. Hunger is the hook." The river shimmered dark as iron, every movement calculated, every pause unbearable. Wind tore suddenly through the trees, scattering leaves into the water. Evelyn clutched her jacket tighter, whispering, "It begins." Marcus scanned the tree line, muscles tense. The storm drives it closer. Jonah's voice trembled. Then we must leave. A low growl rumbled from the distance, thunder folding into the river's pulse. Evelyn shook her head. It will chase us into the forest. Marcus's eyes hardened. And in the forest, we're blind. Jonah pressed his fist to his temples, muttering, "We're already trapped." The first drop of rain splashed into the river, swallowed instantly, as though the water claimed even the sky's tears. Evelyn whispered, "There's no shelter here, only choices that bleed." The rain thickened, hammering the river with violent rhythm. Evelyn shouted over the noise, "It hides beneath the storm." Marcus's eyes blazed, "Or it commands it." Jonah stumbled, nearly falling as mud clung to his boots. Lightning cracked the horizon, illuminating the water's churn. Evelyn grabbed Jonah's arm, steadying him. "Don't fall." Marcus stepped closer to the edge, defying the spray, his voice fierce, "Show yourself." Thunder rolled back, drowning his challenge. Jonah's voice cracked, "Don't call it." The river writhed, froth foaming white like teeth, yet nothing emerged. Only the sense of a predator circling, unseen, waiting. Fear swallowed their voices, until only the storm spoke. The storm's fury gave way to sudden stillness, the rain easing into a heavy drizzle. Evelyn's chest heaved as she whispered, "It's watching." Marcus's eyes scanned the glassy surface, his voice low. No storm moves without its will. Jonah shuddered, muttering, "Why us?" Evelyn's gaze hardened, "Because we're here." Marcus spat into the river, his words sharp, "Let it see defiance." The spit vanished instantly, swallowed as if never there. Jonah's voice cracked, "You taunt what cannot die." Evelyn shook her head. "Nothing is eternal, not even rivers." The water darkened, almost black, shifting with currents that had no wind. The silence that followed left them stranded in dread. The drizzle faded into a thin mist, coating the river with a sheen that glistened unnaturally. Evelyn whispered, "It's not storm water. It's thicker." Marcus crouched low, his fingers skimming mud that smelled metallic. "This isn't nature," he growled. Jonah gagged, covering his nose. "It stinks like rot." Evelyn's eyes widened, her voice sharp, "The river is poison." Marcus clenched his jaw, muttering, "It doesn't just kill with teeth. It kills with silence." Jonah shook his head in disbelief, whispering, "It's not alive. It's dying." The water pulsed darker, veins of oily color spreading across its surface. Evelyn's throat tightened as she whispered, "And it's taking everything with it." Evelyn lifted her hand from the water, oily streaks clinging to her skin. She whispered, "It poisons even touch." Marcus's voice rumbled, "This is no storm's doing." Jonah's eyes darted, fear sharp, then who bleeds into the river? A rusted barrel half submerged caught their eyes, seeping dark tendrils. Evelyn hissed, "It's not the river's hunger, it's ours." Marcus's fists clenched, muttering, "Men poison what they cannot tame." Jonah's voice cracked, "We blamed it for our sins." The barrel groaned against the current, spilling more filth, the smell suffocating. Evelyn pressed her hands together, trembling. "We feared a predator. But the shadow is us." Jonah's voice trembled as he stared at the spreading stain. "We thought it hunted us." Evelyn's eyes glistened, her whisper steady. "It was warning us." Marcus spat bitterly. "Warnings we never heard." The river burbled, carrying dead fish drifting lifeless to shore. Jonah knelt, lifting one with shaking hands, whispering, "Even they had no chance." Evelyn touched his shoulder gently, murmuring, "They are the first sacrifices." Marcus's gaze hardened, muttering, "And we will be the last." The stench of decay pressed into their lungs, a truth undeniable. Evelyn's voice cracked, "We feared shadows in the water, but the true shadow wears our face." The mist parted briefly, revealing the shoreline scarred with rusted scraps and broken pipes. Evelyn whispered, "The river doesn't betray, it remembers." Marcus stepped toward the debris, voice harsh, "It remembers what we buried here." Jonah's eyes widened, muttering, "We poisoned our own lifeline." A crow landed on twisted metal, its caw hollow and cruel. Evelyn's throat burned, whispering, "We are the predator." Marcus's fists trembled, his voice raw, and the prey. Jonah clutched his chest, breath shallow. Then how do we fight ourselves? The silence that followed was heavier than storm, as if the river had spoken its judgment through stillness. Jonah fell to his knees, voice breaking. "We thought the river cursed us." Evelyn crouched, her hand gripping his shoulder, whispering, "But it was we who cursed it." Marcus stared into the blackened water, his reflection warped and broken. "This is the twist of survival," he said coldly. "We feared monsters in the deep, yet we became them." The oily surface shimmered under pale light, carrying echoes of their guilt. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, her voice soft. "The river runs silent, not because it is empty, but because it mourns." Jonah buried his face in his hands as Marcus turned away, unable to meet the truth in the water's stare. The river thrashed as if awakened by rage, waves clawing at the bank. Evelyn screamed, "It's fighting back." Marcus pulled her close, shouting, "No, it's drowning with us." Jonah stumbled, nearly swept away, his voice cracking. "We can't stand against this." Lightning ripped the sky open, revealing oil swirling like veins of blood across the surface. Evelyn's fists shook as she yelled, "Then we fight, even if it ends us." Marcus's eyes burned, better to die defying than kneeling. Jonah sobbed, clinging to Evelyn's arm, whispering, "Don't leave me." The river surged higher, black froth curling like jaws, ready to consume them whole. The bank collapsed beneath Marcus's boots, dragging him to his knees. Evelyn cried out, "Marcus!" as he clutched at roots, mud sliding beneath his grip. Jonah screamed, "Help him!" rushing forward despite trembling legs. Evelyn grabbed Jonah's sleeve, yelling, "You'll be next." Marcus's voice thundered, "Let me go." His body strained against the pull, muscles shaking. Evelyn's tears mixed with rain, "I won't lose you." Jonah threw himself forward, catching Marcus's arm with both hands, veins bulging with effort. The current roared louder, its pull relentless. Marcus shouted, "If one must fall, let it be me." Evelyn screamed back, "We rise together or not at all." With a violent surge, the river swallowed Marcus waist deep, dragging him further. Evelyn lunged forward, her nails clawing his jacket, screaming, "Hold on!" Marcus's face twisted with defiance, shouting, "Save Jonah, not me." Jonah's voice cracked, "No, you're the strength we need." Evelyn's arms shook as she fought the current, every muscle burning. Mud splashed across her face, but her grip refused to break. Marcus roared, "You cannot fight both me and the river." Jonah's teeth clenched as he pressed his weight down, anchoring Evelyn, crying, "Then it will fight us all." The roar of water drowned their words, but not their will. Marcus's arm slipped free, his body jerking deeper into the current. Evelyn screamed, "No," as Jonah lunged further, his thin frame trembling with effort. With a final burst, Evelyn and Jonah pulled together, heaving Marcus onto the bank. He collapsed, coughing river water, gasping, "It almost had me." Jonah fell beside him, chest heaving, whispering, "We pulled you back." Evelyn's tears streamed unchecked, her voice hoarse, "Nothing takes us unless we let it." Marcus rolled onto his side, gripping her hand, whispering, "Then let us fight until nothing remains." The river's roar dulled for a breath, as though recognizing their defiance. The storm reached its peak, thunder cracking like war drums. Evelyn stood, soaked and trembling, raising her voice against the raging water, "We will not kneel to your silence." Marcus staggered up, blood at his brow, shouting, "We are more than prey." Jonah's voice broke, but he cried out, "We live because we choose to." The river surged again, black froth clawing at their boots, but they stood firm, defiant shadows against its fury. Their cries tore through the storm, raw and unyielding. For one breath, the river faltered, its rage echoing back like a wounded beast. Evelyn whispered fiercely, "You will not own us tonight." The storm broke apart, leaving drizzle that fell like exhausted tears. Evelyn sat on the mud, her voice trembling. "It let us live." Marcus shook his head slowly, muttering, "It doesn't grant mercy, It simply takes when it chooses. Jonah collapsed beside them, clutching his knees, whispering, "Why not tonight?" The river had stilled, its black sheen dull under a pale sky. Evelyn traced the wet ground with her fingertip, whispering, "Because we fought for what breath remained." Marcus exhaled, blood streaking his brow. "Survival is never victory. It is only delay." Jonah's eyes closed, his words faint. Then every moment we breathe is stolen from its hunger. Evelyn looked across the water, her reflection warped in oily ripples. She whispered, "We thought it hunted us, but we hunted it first." Marcus' jaw clenched, his voice low. "The poison runs deeper than the current." Jonah lifted his head, despair etched in his eyes. "Then it will never heal." Evelyn brushed a trembling hand over his shoulder, whispering, "The river remembers both wounds and defiance." Marcus muttered, "Defiance doesn't cleanse poison." Jonah's breath caught as he murmured, "Then our children will drink what we've bled into it." The silence stretched, heavy as stone, pressing the truth into their bones with merciless weight. The forest dripped with rain, its branches sagging heavy with water. Evelyn whispered, "Even the trees grieve." Marcus leaned against a trunk, his breathing ragged. "They've stood longer than us. They've seen what we've done." Jonah's hand brushed over bark scarred by knives, his voice weak, "We leave wounds wherever we go." Evelyn's eyes filled with sorrow, "And we call it survival." Marcus's voice cracked, "It is not survival if nothing endures." Jonah sank to his knees, whispering, "Then the river is only our mirror." The trees groaned in the wind, echoing truth through hollow silence, binding them to a fate they had written. The drizzle faded, leaving a hollow calm that pressed into their chests. Evelyn whispered, "It is finished." Marcus stared at the river, shaking his head. "No, it is never finished. It flows even when we are gone." Jonah's eyes darted, desperate. "Then what becomes of us?" Evelyn touched his arm gently. "We live until the river decides otherwise." Marcus's eyes narrowed, muttering, "It does not decide. It only carries the weight we give it." Jonah swallowed hard, his voice cracking, "Then it carries too much already." The water rippled faintly, as if acknowledging the burden of their truth. The sun broke faintly through the clouds, its light thin and fragile. Evelyn whispered, "We see another dawn." Marcus's face hardened. "Dawn is not reprieve. It is reminder." Jonah's shoulders sagged, his voice hollow. "Then it will remind us every day of what we've lost." Evelyn's lips pressed tight, tears glimmering. "We breathe because the river has not taken us yet." Marcus muttered, "But it will." Jonah's hands trembled, his whisper faint. "Then we must carry this truth until the silence swallows us." The river glowed faint gold beneath the weak light, but its stillness remained a wound that would never heal. The river stretched silent, its surface holding the faint glow of a dying dawn. Evelyn whispered, "It hides its scars beneath the light." Marcus stood with arms crossed, his voice low, "But the scars never heal." Jonah's hands shook as he traced circles in the mud, murmuring, "We are written in its silence." The air was still, as though the earth itself refused to breathe. Evelyn's eyes welled, her voice breaking. "We came seeking life and left it poisoned." Marcus turned sharply, his jaw clenched. "No, we poisoned it long before we came." Jonah's head dropped, his whisper hollow, "And the river only remembers." Evelyn stepped closer to the water, her reflection warped in oily streaks. She whispered, "What if this is the last dawn it carries?" Marcus's voice rumbled, "Then it dies with us." Jonah's eyes widened, voice trembling, "No, it will carry death far beyond us." The crow circled overhead, its cry sharp against the silence. Evelyn pressed her hands together as if in prayer, whispering, "Forgive us." Marcus shook his head, muttering, "The river doesn't forgive. It only endures." Jonah's whisper cracked, "And one day it will endure alone." The crow's shadow passed over the water, stretching long like a wound. The wind shifted, carrying the stench of decay along the shore. Evelyn covered her mouth, her voice muffled. "It rots from within." Marcus picked up a dead fish, its scales dull, whispering coldly, "So do we." Jonah flinched back, shaking his head. "Don't say that." Evelyn's tears blurred her vision. "Every breath we take from it is stolen now." Marcus hurled the fish back into the water, its body vanishing beneath black ripples. Jonah whispered, trembling, "Then the river carries our graves with it." Evelyn pressed her hand to Jonah's back, whispering, "And still we breathe." The silence mocked their fragile survival. The sun broke through clouds, pale and cold, failing to warm the earth. Evelyn whispered, "It shines, but the light feels hollow." Marcus's shadow stretched long, his voice sharp. "Light doesn't heal what's already gone." Jonah hugged his arms tight, his whisper faint, "Then the world ends quietly." A single ripple cut across the still river, spreading wide before vanishing. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her voice steady, not quietly. "It remembers every cry, every fall," Marcus muttered, "and it will echo long after us." Jonah swallowed hard, whispering, "Then we are only ghosts in its water." The ripple faded, leaving silence sharp enough to wound. The three stood together, silent as the river returned to stillness. Evelyn whispered, "One day it will flow without us." Marcus's jaw tightened, his voice grim, "And it will not grieve." Jonah's whisper cracked like glass, "But it will remember." The wind died, leaving only the faint drip of water from branches. Evelyn's eyes closed, her voice soft, "We survive only as echoes." Marcus turned his gaze to the horizon, muttering, "Echoes fade." Jonah's tears streaked his face as he whispered, "Then let our echo last long enough to haunt them." The river shimmered faintly, silent and eternal, carrying their final truth.